Coming up next on This Week in Computer Hardware, AMD 7990 versus GTX 690. Asus has a sweet new SSD, and how about that Gigabyte motherboard? A Switch will solve that LAN party problem. 4K gaming, that's what a $1,000 GPU is for. All that and quite a bit more, all coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 215, recorded April 25th, 2013. Super GPUs, Switches, and 4K gaming.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Ting.com. Ting is a new mobile phone service that makes sense. Save money with Ting. Pay for what you use, doesn't require a contract, and offers unlimited devices on one pooled plan. To save $25 on your first Ting device, visit twitch.ting.com. That's twitch.ting.com.
Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, Twitch's weekly show that aims to bring you the most useful and informative news in computer hardware, tablet excitement, and occasionally a little bit of cell phone activity. Because, hey, they're all running applications, they're all computers, and as we'll explain later on, ARM is taking over. Little tiny low-power processors taking over the world, people. We have proof, financial proof. Ladies and gentlemen, joining me as always, the laugh you hear from old Kentucky, Mr. Ryan Shrout, PCPer.com. Are you running 4K? Are you testing video cards fervently in 4K?
To my left, 4K benchmarks are being run currently, yes.
Yes!
I am not playing them, unfortunately, but maybe after this show, I'll push them out of the way and sit down and say, well, I want to actually see what this looks like. I want to play Crysis at 3840 by 2160 on 3 Titan cards. That's just what I want to do.
As well you should. Well, so we talked about it last week. Seiki, a company you may or may not have heard of, offering Tiger Direct offering a Seiki 4K and Ultra HD monitor, 3840 by 2160, up on Tiger Direct for a mere $1,500. Ryan got his in. Robert ordered one. It's in our lab. He's starting the testing on that. I was doing some 4K gaming today on some, titles you've never heard of, while we were waiting for BioShock to download, because we had like a 2 megabit connection, and we were like,
yeah, I
got to go to the dentist, so
it's a good time to go to the dentist.
It'll be done in an hour. Let me know how cool it is. But this is a case with that many pixels. It's essentially four 1080p monitors, 4 1080p monitors worth of pixels. You can actually justify, or maybe actually need, a $1,000 GPU. I mean,
that's what we're trying to. Excuse me. That's what we're trying to find out, right? So, we are going to test. We've run benchmarks on a single Titan SLI, and Titan 3-way. We're going to run GTX 680, GTX 680 SLI. We'll get into the 7990s, 7970s, and Crossfire. I think it's unfair to go anything even below like a single GTX 680, right. And that may be a little bit. Like, you may have to turn down the image quality settings too much for it to be a great experience.
I've got like a Core i7 box with. Oops, sorry. I was going to say,
go ahead.
I have a Core i7 box with a 680 in it. I'm sitting there thinking, we need more power, Scotty, which is something I've never really felt with that GPU before.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, right? Because the panel, the Seiki TV, it's 4K at 30 hertz. That's the input signal to it. Now, obviously, just like with the 60 hertz panel, all your traditional monitors, you run at frame rates higher than that if you disable VSync. So we'll measure frame rates definitely higher than 30 on this TV, but it creates some interesting effects, right? So you're running at half the refresh rate, which kind of makes, so far in our experiences, it kind of makes the tearing associated with having VSync disabled a little more apparent.
Right.
Also, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't help that it's a 50-inch monitor and it's 3 feet from our face, because that's kind of like how our testing environment allow us to work. Like, we only have, the HDMI cable only stretches so far back, I guess is what I'm saying.
You need a longer HDMI cable.
Yeah, we have some. We're going to try them because I want to see if the older cables will work just fine. This cable that came in the box was labeled as an Ultra HD HDMI cable. I have a feeling it doesn't matter, but
not a little.
Yeah, we'll see. It's so far so good. I mean, You're going to need a lot of horsepower for certain games. Crysis 3, Far Cry 3, Sleeping Dogs. You know, Battlefield 3 will probably play pretty well with a single 680. You know, we tested Skyrim, and that plays just fine. Dirt 3 will play just fine.
I came to the realization that I now want a 4K monitor on my desktop. I just need another foot of desk, and then it'll be perfect because I can have like 7 scripts open simultaneously with several browser windows and probably, you know, Twitter, 2 or 3 Twitter. You know what I mean? It's just I was sitting there. I was like, I like this. Like, I just need a slightly larger, slightly deeper desk, and I would be all over using this as a desktop monitor.
We get these questions all the time about, can I use my HD TV as a monitor? And our answer was always no, because a 50-inch 1080p screen at 3 or 4 feet doesn't look good.
No.
But a 4K monitor at 3 or 4 feet looks surprisingly good. And you do have that real estate advantage, right? Where now you don't, you know, you could probably, I mean, you have not essentially, you actually have 4 1080p monitors that you're looking at, right? They just happen to be in one screen.
And it's like staring at a whiteboard. I mean, it's funny, right? Because the Kehl factor is the idea that the higher the resolution, the closer you can get, or the closer you want to, or can sit in front of the monitor, the closer you can get to the monitor without, you know, having your eyeballs fall out of your face. I can hear Lloyd Case shuddering right now. Wherever Lloyd Case is, a shudder just went down at the world's worst explanation of the Kehl factor. But the resolution goes up, the closer you can get to the monitor, which is why HDTVs, you know, you can put an HDTV in the living room. It's 8 foot wide and be happy with a 60-inch monitor. But yeah, it was amazing. Like, this is really dense pixels. This is just a lot of pixels on a big screen, and it was like having like my computer is suddenly a whiteboard, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. Because I can
now has Robert done any of his testing on this yet?
Just starting to. You know, the first thing was like looking at the 1080p overscanning. You know, I gotta say, it was doing a pretty good job. We were playing. So we have a Puget Sound or a Puget system attached to it, Puget Serenity. What I want to say a Core i7 and a 1080, excuse me, a 680 GPU, and I'll double check that, feeding it. And it was interesting watching, like, 1080p video scales fantastically so far. We haven't done any of the real serious benchmarking yet. Robert's going to get into that. I'm kind of curious to what the measurements on the, you know, how the backlighting holds up and some other stuff. But it looks, you know, if I walked in, threw a Blu-ray in it, I would be happy watching a movie on it right now. I want 4K content, though.
We've downloaded a bunch. Let's see. I downloaded a bunch of 100 megabit H.264 3840 by 2160 content, and it looks awesome.
Where did you find that?
I got it. I can send it to you.
Okay.
I guess I don't really know. I don't want to say for sure. It's not illegal content, but it's internal content used for some testing stuff. There is one video that I almost bought. Timescapes. Yeah. And I was this close to ordering the $300 version.
You don't need the $300 version
on a hard drive. I just like the idea of buying a video that is so large it comes on its own hard drive.
Well, it was funny. I didn't tell you, we relaunched the long version of HD Nation again last week. So youtube.com/techhd, youtube.com/techfeed, look for HD Nation. But we were talking about where you can find 4K content now. And of course, YouTube's had 4K content since 2010. Timescapes, which is available in a $99, like 25 gigabyte 4K video. The theater version, I have a, you know, $300,000 projector version that Ryan was just talking about that's like $300. And the other thing we realized is I was reading up on the restoration of The Wizard of Oz, and when they scanned that, they were very forward thinking. They did an 8K scan on that, and apparently that was 22 terabytes of data. 22,000 gigabytes of data by the time they scanned all 3 negatives of the entire film in.
Seems necessary.
Well, I think what happened is they had done a restoration a few years ago, and this time, you know, like literally like 4 or 5 years before, this time I think they wanted to like be prepared for the next 2 formats forward. Because the last restoration they did was great for the DVD, but they couldn't use it on Blu-ray or anything else. So I think they wanted to have one sort of definitive version, at least until monitors go to 8K. Which is a long way of getting around to a question about AMD's new Radeon 7990. The 7990 versus the GTX at the high end, right? So we have something to do with these $1,000 GPUs where it'll actually, other than multiple monitors, although now I really, really, really want you to take the 3 Titans and to buy 2 more of Seiki's 50-inch plasmas and create a giant surround sound gaming system. Or a giant surround gaming system.
You guys provide the budget and I'll order them tomorrow.
Burke, cut me a check.
Right. So this is the new 7990. This came out just this week. It is the not very, I mean, they weren't trying to hide it. They talked about it for a while, actually. You can see here it's got 3 fans. It looks I would say drastically less interesting than the GTX Titan or the GTX 690. It doesn't, it's just kind of a plastic case. There's nothing fancy about it. It doesn't have any cool windows or metal finishing across it. It's a functional product, and it does have 5 simultaneous outputs on it, 4 mini display port and 1 dual link DVI, not 6 but 5, and this will allow you to do 5 portrait displays, which is kind of cool. So if you have 5 1080p displays, you can do a portrait Eyefinity configuration in that way. That's kind of nice. Let me say this about the performance of the card first. There's 2 different topics we're going to talk about. One is the card doesn't look great. So it's a pair of 7970 GPUs downclocked just a tiny little bit. It's got 6 gigs of memory on there, 3 gigs for each GPU. It is essentially Radeon HD 7970s running on Crossfire on a single PCB. So we've talked about it a lot. That shouldn't really surprise anybody. The problem is all the talk we've done about frame rating is applicable here. It still depends on Crossfire technology to get that performance out of it, and because of that, it suffers from a lot of runt frames. It suffers from much lower observed frame rates than it should because of that. And the same games exhibited it with the 7990 that they did in the 7970s and the 7950s and all the other cards that have seen these problems. So it didn't really change anything in that regard. We had like a 13.2 beta, 13.5 beta driver that we used on it. That was the driver that was publicly available as of yesterday. And that's the one that will be available when this card is available for sale, I think, starting next week. So it's a problem because basically the conclusion of my review of this product is don't buy this card because it's not a good graphics card at this point. When you expect to have all of the performance of those 2 GPUs showing up, and I don't really want to get into it too much because I know we talk about it seemingly every week about the whole idea of frame rating technology and what it's able to detect differently than what simple fraps is able to do. So that out of the way, I don't think it is a good $1,000 purchase today. If you're one of those people that wants to buy a $1,000 graphics card, the Titan or the 690 is a better option. It just is, right? So the Titan will be lower performance, but it's only a single GPU, so you don't have any of the hiccups or headaches involved with multi-GPU. And then the 690 is a little bit faster, especially on single monitor testing, although it'll be curious to see how the 690 compares to the Titan now that we're up to 4K resolutions, and if the higher resolution affects textures differently, and thus the additional frame buffer of Titan is better. But maybe we should have that answer by next week.
Excellent.
So bummer, right? The 7990 kind of was a disappointment. It was a long buildup, more than a year since they first started teasing it a little bit. And it kind of flopped. I think they either released it too late after we had done all this frame rating discussion and changed the way people are looking at graphics card performance, or they did it too early before they were able to fix those problems.
Which is a wonderful segue into our next story, which is that AMD is releasing prototype drivers that are improving Crossfire and frame rating results, or at least they are trying to improve Crossfire with driver upgrades to improve frame rating results. The future of Catalyst, what's going on?
So they knew that this was going to happen. They knew that those of us that are testing based on frame times, especially using this capture methodology, were going to have bad experiences and bad results with the 7990. So to try to get out in front of it, they hacked together. I don't mean that in a bad way. They tried desperately to get a driver out to some of the press that was an early prototype of what they're doing to try to fix it. And I say it's a prototype because it's much earlier than a beta or even an alpha driver. There were lots of bugs. It was very buggy in terms of crashing and needing to reboot several times in order to get games to launch and that kind of stuff. But it is the first version that we have really spent a lot of time with that implements a frame metering technology in the driver, and it's something that they've had to go in and drastically change the driver pipeline from beginning to end to now keep track of this metric that it had never kept track of before in order to do frame metering. So if you look at that story, you will see another set of benchmarks. It compares the 7990 running at 13.5 drivers that we used in our review, and then a new 7970 result using the Prototype 2 driver. And the differences are substantial. The orange line that represents the 7990 as it was reviewed, and the black line that represents the 7990 with the new driver. And you'll see there the frame times are much more consistent. It's a much tighter band of color. It's not as good as the 690 yet. It's still not as good as the 690, but it is much better. And they're still working on it, right? Yeah, they're still tweaking. There's a lot of stuff that has to be done. They're basically starting from scratch as of like 60 days ago and trying to play catch up as fast as they can. And there's going to be hiccups along the way. There's going to be issues where some games work and some games don't and all that other kind of stuff. They have a fix for single monitor resolutions, but the fix does not work for Eyefinity today. So, and actually it'd be curious because I don't know if it will work with 4K resolutions yet. It has to do with the image compositor that they're using. But it's interesting. And the only other thing I want to really say about it is I've had some questions of, why did we make this 2 articles? Why did we not include that prototype data in with our initial review? And my answer is pretty simple. That driver will not be available until June or July.
Right.
So I didn't want that. I didn't want people to read that article, not listen to This Week in Computer Hardware, not listen to our podcast, not hear the explanation. Do what a lot of people do, and they kind of go to the conclusion. They go, oh, okay, great. Look at a couple of benchmark graphs, and they move on. And buy this $1,000 card thinking that they're going to get that performance next week because it's not going to happen. So I wanted to kind of separate it so that here's why we don't recommend this card today, but here's why we think in 2 months it may be a completely different story, and it may be a much better platform, not just for the 7990, but for 7970s and Crossfire, 7950s and Crossfire, 7870s. The whole Crossfire as a platform could improve drastically by then.
That's a big deal. And
it is.
We've talked in the past how amazing it is what can be fixed in software. Linux being one of the most dramatic examples. When Linus Torvalds communicated, we were communicating,
right,
ma'am, with Flip the Bird to NVIDIA, and lo and behold, within weeks, the performance of NVIDIA's Linux driver doubled. But it's amazing what can be fixed in software if they can apply the resources, or if they choose to apply the resources. You can't always fix it in software or firmware, but it's amazing what driver updates can do. Keep updating your GPU, people.
Yep.
G-Series embedded products. Is anything in the G-Series going to end up in tablets? Or should we talk about actually the surprising success of Surface? You want to talk Surface?
Yeah, let's do that. This is actually kind of a new story to me as well. It says they sold 3 million units.
Yes.
That's a lot more than I would have guessed.
7.5% of tablet sales in the first quarter of 2013. So Apple's like 50% of tablet sales. Microsoft picked up 7.5%, which leaves the remainder, let's see, 57.5 minus 100. Basically, like 42.5% of the market goes to the 32,000 Android flavors of tablets on the market.
Right.
This is interesting. I have some questions about this. One, because Q4, the holiday shopping season, is when a gigantic amount of tablets get sold, and number two, retail sales of a lot of consumer electronics falls off a cliff in January because people hear about the new stuff coming out of CES. They have no money left over from Christmas. The kids all got new stuff going into the Christmas holidays for Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Christmas. So I'm curious if this is kind of like Surface was new and everybody had already bought their tablets on the Android and Apple platforms in December or November, or if Microsoft is doing one of those classic, you know, the 1.0 product sucks, the 2.0 product isn't awful, and the 3.0 product takes over the universe. You know, it's a good start. You know, is it a plateau? Is it something where it's going to keep increasing share? Because, you know, I remember when Android was this little tiny percentage of tablet sales, and wow, look what they did. You know, for a long time, tablet sales was like 90% iPad. You know, now iPad's down to 50%. So that's a big change. I'm impressed. I'm really curious to see what it looks like in another 6 months.
I actually saw somebody using a Surface Pro out in public. So you know, I was at a Panera, go figure, right? And I saw somebody. It's like, well, that's not your typical MacBook Air that I would see dining at the Panera Bread restaurant at lunch
with the panini sandwich.
Right, exactly. With the classical music playing in the background. Come on, where are you at, son?
Oh my goodness! So if you're wondering who's making money in, it's kind of, I was laughing, and I should probably look at the rundown rather than just grabbing the next tab that's open on my screen. But ARM seems to be making all of the money, or at least all of the money it's not going to Qualcomm or Intel is ARM, or all of the money that ARM's not getting is going to Qualcomm or Intel, and to a lesser degree AMD. But this is pretty crazy, right? When everybody's talking about PC sales being down and processor sales being flat on the desktop or laptop, ARM's first quarter 2013 up 26% year over year. We don't talk financials a lot here except when one of our favorite companies is in trouble or doing something strange. But this is we keep telling you that mobile is a huge part of computers and where computing as we think of it is going. And yeah, it's 2.6 million ARM chips in the first quarter of this year, a 35% improvement over last year. And quote, further evidence ARM still dominates the low power mobile market. Tim Very wrote this up for PC Per. You know, and then there's, of course, that doesn't even count, I think, the licensing. Yeah. 94.9 million in licensing ARM chips. It's just really interesting. ARM's making a lot of money. Licensing,
for all the noise, royalties. I mean, this is why Intel wants the mobile market, right? Absolutely. This is where the growth is. We see the reports about how PC sales drop, and then we see reports about how mobile processor sales have jumped this dramatic amount. And you see, you know, this is why Intel is spending so much money on their super low power Atom architecture, trying to get into cell phones, trying to get into tablets, and start to eat away at that kind of ARM dominance in that market.
And there you have it. It's just funny. It was just like, wow. It's always, I like it when companies are making money. It makes me feel like they'll be around next year and I can buy more cool stuff. If you're looking for something, we were laughing. A friend of mine picked up a case, ordered it online, and realized it was actually, despite the description, apparently he didn't look at the actual dimensions, but that it was absolutely huge, and he was putting a little tiny Mini-itx board inside of it. Pretty good review. I found a review of it up on eteknix.com, eteknix.com, the Corsair 350D. Basically, they have a new Obsidian series, the 350D Micro ATX PC case, and it is 17 by 17 by 8.3 inches. For some reason, it's put down as 1.77 inches in the specs, but I was like, that's a little narrow for a PC case that can handle.
Yeah, that's probably not right.
You know, like, you know, two 2.5-inch drive bays, two 3.5-inch drive bays, two 5.25-inch drive bays, 5 expansion slots, a dog pile of fan mounts. And I don't know if you can actually see that link I put in the show notes, Burke, but a really good-looking case with, you know, a nice open vented top, passively vented, although you could add fans into that if you want to pull air out through the top of the case. Really clean design. And I got to say, I would love it if it didn't have the window on the side, but if you want a window on the side of your case, this is about the most sophisticated-looking case window I've seen in a long time.
It's big. It takes up a lot of the area of the door, almost the entirety of it. We actually just edited a video review of this case that we'll have up on PCPer.com probably tomorrow on Friday.
Ooh, cool.
And we put a 1,000-watt power supply in it, 2 GTX 680s, a 100 or 240 millimeter radiator, CPU cooler, and it all fit, and it all looked really good. Again, it's one of the things. the introduction of those cable routing holes and cases just changed the way that I build systems drastically, because I used to be the messy guy who would just have cables wherever. I didn't take enough time to zip tie things or to make them neat. And this kind of forces you to do it so it's neat, except if you look at the back of it, but just don't look at the back. And it's pretty cool, right? And it works pretty well. It's we've got some pictures like side by side with the 650D, and this is like a smaller version of it. It does not fit an ATX motherboard, so you have to. Don't buy this thinking that I'll just make a small system. You have to have a micro ATX or Mini-itx board for it to work. But when it does, you can get a surprising amount of power in a system like that. You know, my actual desktop system that I work at every day is a micro ATX board. So I don't see any disadvantages really going that route.
Do not fear the micro ATX form factor. It is full of awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, new Mini-itx motherboard from Gigabyte, the Z77N Wi-Fi Mini-itx. One of those names that just rolls right off the tongue and onto the floor. Maury Titleman wrote this up for PCPro.com. He did a full review of the board for PCPro.com. And I got to say, it is a really clean layout for a board. PCI Express slot on the side, memory down, and it's amazing. Like, you know, Intel Wi-Fi module, dual antenna. It's just a really, really, really nice setup. Dual HDMI, dual LAN ports. This is a power user's motherboard as far as I'm concerned. And this has a lot of potential.
It does. It's interesting. He talks about it in the article about how the CPU socket is actually shifted to the bottom right of the motherboard as opposed to the top left, which is where they normally are on especially on Mini-itx platforms, and kind of what that changes. Notice the chipset's actually in the top left-hand corner of the motherboard instead of the processor socket. It's just a little bit different. This board does not have like the overclocking capabilities that you'll see in like the Asus Z77N Deluxe. I think it's a Deluxe Mini-itx board that has like a riser card on the top of it that's power phases and that kind of stuff, some cool things like that. But it gets the job done. It does really well. I think there were just a couple of little. I'm trying to remember exactly what he had in terms of like tiny little cons at the end of the story. Lack of onboard cooling for power components, lack of enthusiast-centric BIOS settings, and the CPU socket placement not large cooler friendly. But again, on a Mini-itx platform, hopefully you kind of think that's going to happen. You know, I think for the types of systems that this motherboard will go into, I mean, you could put this in that Corsair 350D, put a Titan in it or something stupid like that, right? And just, it would be a great gaming machine, because you could put the highest end Ivy Bridge processor in here, highest end graphics card in there, you know, 16 gigs of memory, and you have a gaming system that will rival anything that anybody has out there for the most part, in a tiny, tiny little form factor.
Which is pretty awesome.
Just, you know, you gotta do trade-offs.
Yeah, and it's, you know, as much as I'd like to be upset about it not having the enthusiast BIOS settings, i.e., you know, an emphasis on overclocking and stuff, the reality is, you know, Core i5's got more power than most people are going to use, except unless they're doing like high-end gaming or video editing or serious photo editing. By the time you get to a Core i7, would you get more power by overclocking? Absolutely. Do most people do anything that'll actually use that additional power? Not so much. That said, I've got 2 water coolers sitting on my desk at home, and I'm a freak because I'm going to overclock and stick it to Intel because I love them that way. But this is, I want to upgrade my CPU that I don't need to upgrade just so I can build a system around this, because I'm like, I could do so much cool stuff with this. I don't know. I get excited, man. I get excited about exciting motherboards. Should we talk about the G-Series embedded products? No,
I think that's something let's wait until we actually get products based on it, because it's not going to be very long. It's just newer APUs, super low power APUs for tablets and that kind of stuff from AMD, but it's not as interesting until we actually get a product.
Then perhaps we should just go straight to our bonus stories here on This Week in Computer Hardware. The unhinged, redonkulous SSD of the week. Asus adding the Radeon PCIe SSDs to its ROG lineup. Tim Very wrote this up for PC Per. If you are not familiar with the Republic of Gamers lineup, it is what Asus does when they want to make something really, really cool for gamers with the cash. And the Radeon, or the Radar, PCI Express SSDs, 19-nanometer Toshiba MLC NAND flash, driven by two SandForce 2281 controllers. In a basically, so there's two SandForce drivers, a pile of memory, two SandForce drivers in a RAID 0 configuration. Basically, what you're looking at is the incredible shielding around the box on the front and the back side. The flip side, the other side of that, is open up, was probably where all the memory is, and that's where all the hot air is going to come out or get sucked through at the outside of the case. According to specs provided by Sweeclockers, Asus is launching 120 gigabyte and 240 gigabyte versions, 100,000 IOPS, 120-bit AES encryption, and 620,000 MTBF ratings, mean time between failure. So I would assume that's 620-hour mean time between failure ratings, which is pretty serious. 765 megabyte per second sequential reads, 775 megabyte per second sequential write speeds. And then the 240 gigabyte drive is like 830 megabyte per second sequential reads and 810 megabyte sequential writes. Was Alan excited about this, or did he just look at this and go, why?
Oh no, I mean, this is exciting. It's cool. It's not like something that's drastically different than some of the other stuff we've seen, but Asus has the market share and the output capability to kind of make these more mainstream, and in theory maybe make them less expensive down the road. This will still launch at a high price, I'm sure, but you know, it's using standard, it's probably, we don't know for sure, but it's probably using SandForce controllers. It's probably using, you know, 20 nanometer flash, and you know, in theory they'll be able to pump out a lot more of these, and anything that we can get some more exposure to this type of technology will be good down the road.
It's going to be fun because essentially it is, and I having used a computer, on some level, I mock, you know, RAID 0 SSD configurations, but you do get some ridiculous write speeds out of them and read speeds out of them. So this is essentially, if it wasn't making sense, it's two SSD drives pre-configured on a PCI Express card that drops into your motherboard and gives you all the storage. Oh, my goodness. And we've talked about, I think in the past, we've talked about Asus's Xonar lineup, the high-end audio cards from Asus that were very popular. One was actually on the cover of Stereophile magazine a few years ago. There's some home theater enthusiasts that started using the HDMI pass-through cards from Asus to get around some of the issues, earlier past issues with HDMI passing through, you know, basically uncompressed audio. And so the Creative Sound Blaster now has the ZXR PCI Express sound card. Custom PC Review has the write-up on it. This is a $250 sound card. And, you know, it's kind of funny. Somewhere down near my feet is a $600 or $700 portable audio player. And I'm giggling because I'm like, oh, look, you know, Texas Instruments, you know, Burr Brown digital analog converters. That's a big chunk of the money right there. You know, 127 decibels, you know, 127 decibel DAC, 24-bit, 192 kilohertz for front, left, and right, 24-bit. It's basically, it's amazing because, like, you know, they've got, if I'm not mistaken, they're running, you know, they're running super high-end digital analog converters for all 5 channels of surround sound. Sadly, they'll have 7 channels, although I think 7 channels is overrated. You know, analog to digital converter on the board, another Burr Brown, a headphone amplifier chipset, like an 80 milliwatt and 600 ohm amplifier chipset, so they'll be able to power high-end headphones. It's a really interesting board. You know, if you were thinking about buying like a, you know, spending several $100s on an external digital analog converter for your audio needs, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting to see Creative starting to go back into the high-end again with something other than the XFi brand. XFi? No. Where did I get XFi from? The XFi. Yeah. It's been a while since I've actually seen an XFi card in the wild.
Me too.
You know, it's you know, I'm going to do one quote from Sam Chem's write-up on Custom PC Review. Whereas performance between onboard sound and the Sound Blaster ZZX is very noticeable, I think the sound quality between the Sound Blaster ZZX and the Sound Blaster ZXR is a lot more difficult to discern, especially if you're lacking enthusiast or audiophile-grade listening equipment. Sadly, like with anything, the law of diminishing returns appeals to audio as well. So when you're looking at this, though, big fat capacitors. So like this is a board that was laid out to do serious audio work. I really want to listen to it. You've got copper, basically. If I'm not mistaken, those are actually copper laid down there either for cooling. Yeah, this is the copper for cooling, probably for the amps. It's just a really sophisticated board. I would be really curious to listen to this one, and like that $650. Audio playback device that's down by my feet right now, charging quietly. I have a suspicion that this is not going to be bought by a lot of people, but the people who buy it are going to like it a lot. It's interesting. It's an interesting board. Like basically, it looks like they've got two boards laid out there, and if I'm not mistaken, they've got copper. Gosh, I want to know what that copper strip there is for. I got to reread the article. Interesting stuff. Yeah, it looks like shielding, but it doesn't go all the way to the PC.
It
you
looks
see how it's on
cool.
stand-up? Yes.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't go all the way down to the PCB, does it? Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
You're the audiophile, so I trust you. Regards.
I prefer Audio Geek.
Yeah, okay. Whichever.
Speaking, yeah, no, I don't know. It's funny. I can hear. I enjoy audio, high-end audio gear up to a certain point. At which point I start staring at it and thinking that's a used car. No, I mean, or not a used car like my $5,000 truck, but like a used car, like something that people would drive and feel proud driving.
Yeah.
Speaking of being proud, I am proud of Mr. Ryan Strout's Indiegogo project for the improvement of the PC Perspective video set and production equipment. 22 days left, and they've already raised $11,536 of the $10,000 goal. I'm curious. I mean, are you going to add more to the studio? Are you going to get? I can't make that joking reference on a family-friendly program. Are you going to add fine Corinthian leather? Are you going to add, better cameras?
Yeah, I mean that's the goal, right? So anything if we had in the layout of the project, right? Here's what we're going to do if we get 10,000. Here's what we can do if we do 20,000. And if we can go over that, we have obviously a lot of great ideas, right? And so I was a little nervous when we launched it, and now here we are a week later, and we already hit our primary goal of 10,000, and we're ready to hopefully get some more people on board and get up to that stretch goal of 20 that actually gets us into some new gear and stuff like that. It's been really cool. People left a lot of positive comments on it, and like I said, I was really nervous when we launched it. I was afraid we'd get like $300 and people tell us to, screw off or something like that. But instead, the response has been awesome, and I appreciate anybody that's listening to This Week in Computer Hardware that donated, contributed to the fund. Really appreciate it. If you hadn't seen it yet, you want to read about it, just go to pcpro.com, and on the right-hand side there will be a link. You'll see a picture of me that'll take you to our project page, and you can read about it and see if it's something you think is worth doing. So yeah, much appreciated.
Burke, by the way, wants to thank everyone that's working to make the cameras at the PC Perspective Studio better. I obviously am going to have to work on my set in my secret lab of doom. By the way, the copper bars in that Sound Blaster ZXR, basically EMI dividers between the analog and digital sections of the sound card. So interesting stuff. And those beautiful boards we looked at where we saw all the components, that's not how the card ships. It actually has a EMI shield pretty much wrapped around the entire board. Very stylish, and also designed to keep the all the noise, all the RF inside your case from abusing your audio. It's kind of funny. Somebody in the chat room pointed out, they were like, this is insane. You don't want your high-end audio inside the case. And to a certain degree, I agree. But it's really neat to see something this high-end showing up as a PC card. Which brings me back to being an audio geek and brings us to time to thank one of our sponsors, who instead of helping you spend more money is going to help you save more money.
That's a plus. That is definitely a plus. So our sponsor this week is our friends at Ting, the no BS mobile service. I love that slogan. I really do. They are an MVNO. If you haven't heard of them, they're an MVNO, which is essentially a reseller of the Sprint nationwide cell network. But you don't have to deal with Sprint. You only deal with Ting, and that improves things dramatically. There's no contracts. There's no early termination fees. There's no bundling or ride-along services. You basically choose the service level you want for text messages, for phone minutes, for data, and then you can adjust them all independently or separately. Nothing has to be tied together. There's no overage charges. There's no penalties. If you use more, you just pay for that slight increase up to the next level. And I think even better is if you have unused service, you actually get credits for it. Right? Has that ever happened to you with your cell phone provider before? I will guess no. So if you use less than you thought you would, Ting drops you down to the level you hit and credits the difference on your next bill. That is pretty awesome stuff. You get all the features you'd normally get with any other service: voicemail, caller ID, tethering, hotspot capability, three-way calling, all that kind of stuff. There's no mysterious line items on the bill. They charge you for what you use plus whatever taxes they're legally required to collect, instead of those recovery fees that you will see on your current cell phone bill, which basically should be a for-profit fee for the cell phone provider. You can do things like unlimited devices on one plan. You pay a fixed amount. I think it's $6 per device that you add to that plan, but you can have an unlimited number of them, and they can all draw from the same pool of data and text messages and minutes and that kind of stuff. They have an online control panel where you can adjust all this stuff very easily. No hold customer support. You call 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern, and a real person will pick up the phone. They have excellent online support at help.ting.com for customer forums, simple and powerful help ticketing system, video tutorials, video startup guides, and a lot more. So
it's good stuff.
It is, yes. Patrick knows quite well from firsthand experience how that works out.
I am a Ting subscriber.
when you purchase your mobile device from Ting, which you will receive in 2 to 5 business days, this is how it works. Then you activate your device with Ting and have the option to select a new phone number, or you can port your existing one. Finally, you select the monthly minutes, messages, and megabytes data plan that you want, and you think represent your usage, and Ting will bill you at the beginning of your payment period, but you will be charged or credited the following pay period based on what you actually used. So you don't have to worry about, do I really need the 1,000 minutes, or am I going to be okay with the 500-minute plan? This is going to be an issue for me. Don't have to worry about that with Ting. So visit Ting today, and we have a special URL for you to go to. It is twitch.ting.com, twich.ting.com. Save money and better manage your mobile phone usage with Ting. Check out their savings calculator to see how much you or your company can save. And we have a special offer. Twitch viewers will save $25 on their first Ting device when you sign up. So if you just go to twitch.ting.com, you can start saving today. And when you go to that page, you will see our cover art on there. That's how you know you're at the right place, when you see the This Week in Computer Hardware cover art on your screen. There's a lady holding up a sign with I guess that's supposed to be my face still. My hair has never been that brown, but I'll take what I can get, I guess. So we thank Ting for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware.
At least you have hair, man.
No gift horse. I gotcha. Not in the mouth. Can do.
Yeah. Thank you, Ting. We got questions. Jazz has a question about a Slingbox project. He says, hey, Ryan and Pat, I've recently been tasked to hook up a Slingbox, therefore watching TV on the go via iPhone 3GSs. Don't ask, he says. So HD quality is out. And did I mention pixelation and choppy quality are fine with the mixed results? Not usually what we go for, but it's always nice to have a low barrier to entry. The trick, Jazz says, is without using DSL or a cable connection, but instead with the unlimited AT&T 3G iPad. Crazy, huh? Although they are in a full 5-bar area, so they have great 3G speeds at 2 megs and faster down and around 512, 2 megs and faster down and 512 kilobit per second up. So I got to thinking, jailbreak the iPad, then set it up as a Wi-Fi hotspot. We would then need to connect to a wireless to Ethernet adapter, as the Slingbox only has Ethernet out, no Wi-Fi. Or would it be easier to use the iPad as a USB modem to a router or switch and then connect the Slingbox Ethernet directly to that? With the setup being left alone after the install, the iPad would need to be powered so it could be a router and switch. Could a router or switch power an iPad through its USB WAN port? Almost undoubtedly no.
No.
Which way would you go, and have any cheap suggestions on products or jailbreak apps? So It's interesting. So basically, they want to use a 3G iPad that has an unlimited data plan from AT&T to connect their Slingbox Pro HD to the internet. Which has a whopping 512 kilobits up speed in their testing in their 5-bar area, which is approximately the minimum upload speed you can use for a Slingbox Pro HD.
That's a pretty low minimum for streaming that kind of video.
Yeah.
There are lots of apps that you can download that will jailbreak your iPad and allow you to use it as a hotspot. And then you'd have to have a wireless bridge for the Slingbox, as you suggest. And that will work. It will function. But as somebody who uses a Slingbox fairly regularly, I can tell you that with a 2 megabit upstream capability from my house through my cable provider, I have a hard time getting a solid, reliable feed out of it. That I don't think the Slingbox service is as perfected as I would like. It has some hiccups, it has some issues, and I think you would be investing too much money, I think, in this project. I would say you really, really, really need to try to find DSL service or something like that.
I can see why you might want to avoid paying a monthly fee to turn an exorbitant monthly fee to turn your iPad into a router the sort of legal and legit way. Yeah, if you want to jailbreak it, go for it. I don't think I've seen, and please, if you know of one, email Twitch, TWICH at twit.tv. But I don't think I've seen one of the standalone, routers designed to be used with USB modems that'll work with an iPhone or an iPad.
No, I don't. No, because there's a lot of software involved. It's not simply a hardware, DSP device type thing. So I would say that is not going to work. You can do it with what you suggested a jailbreak plus a wireless bridge, but I think you're getting into a pretty big hassle for an experience that will be relatively poor, would be my guess.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yep, sorry.
Eric sent an email looking for a wireless router. I like this part at the beginning. Obligatory praise statement. I really love the show, blah, blah, blah. I've been listening since episode 1, blah, blah, blah. It's really helped me in choosing my own hardware, blah, blah, blah. Thanks for a great show. / obligatory praise statements. Thank you, Eric. I actually really appreciated that. Hope that didn't come off as too sarcastic. No, actually, I enjoy it. I'm from New Jersey. People give me all the time. I really do love the show, and I'm sincere, though, most of that obligatory praise statement. However, I'm currently in need of some advice. Step up, gentlemen, I think is what I'm hearing. I am attending a university that will remain... I am attending a university that will remain nameless. Recently, we made a huge leap forward in the gaming community on campus when we started our own League of Legends club. This club is officially supported with swag, tournament prizes, and so forth by Riot Games. The problem is that we are currently running into is networking. When we do LAN parties on campus, there are typically a limited number of network jacks for people to plug into. In addition, the wireless routers on campus seem to get overwhelmed, and many of us connected to them get lag spikes at crucial moments, very crucial moments during the game. I've been bringing a D-Link 9-port switch in my much-beloved Asus RTN66U, which has largely solved this problem. The problem is that I'm running into is that sometimes we have fairly large clouds, 50 to 100 people, and my good old Asus router just cannot keep up. I am looking for a router that can handle 50 to 100 connections with a mix of wired and wireless connections. I have ventured into business class router shopping, and it is making my head spin. I bet it is if you're a college student. Our club has a bit of money, but I don't want to waste it on features we do not need. Honestly, we just need something that will allow us to hold these parties without frustrations. We don't need VPN, VPS, or a lot of other business class features. QoS would be nice, but not necessary. Thanks again for the great show, and I'm looking forward to a response. Well, thank you, Eric.
Obligatory answer. Google it. Oh, wait, no, okay.
My first thought is one, shove everybody who's got an Ethernet port at the LAN party. Everybody make everybody buy a 25-foot Ethernet cable or a 100-foot Ethernet cable, and make them, anybody who's got an Ethernet port turns off their router and uses Ethernet. That's step one, because gigabit Ethernet will solve many of your problems in life. And then what you're going to look for is you're going to go to Amazon.com, or better yet, actually, go to the, if you want to have a lot of fun, if you want to learn a lot about networking, do yourself a favor. Go over to smallnetbuilder.com. This is an incredible website. This is like the last great place for consumer, as in affordable network product testing. They do some amazing testing of routers and wireless. You can learn a lot there. But one of the things they're going to tell you is that a gigabit switch is essentially Stone Age technology at this point. So what you want to look for is the cheapest gigabit switch you can buy, which of course has me immediately going up to Amazon.com. And this is also, by the way, a time when it's really nice to have a friend in the IT department at your campus. The TrendNet 8-port unmanaged gigabit GreenNet standard switch. That's 8 ports for $33. 5 ports for $20. Let's see. What I'm looking for is a nice. Here we go. TrendNet 20. Here we go. TrendNet 24-port unmanaged. I don't think that'll be a problem with the amount of traffic you're dealing with. Gigabit GreenNet desktop switch. That's 24-bit. Gigabit switch, that's $120. That's starting to sound really interesting.
Yeah,
but I would shove. Go ahead.
He said 50. He said 50 to 100 connections and a mix of wired and wireless already.
Yeah,
that's a lot of connections for a router. I mean, that's a lot. Switches are. I mean, I'm trying to think. I guess. I guess you're going down the right path if you just like link 3 or 4. 24-port gigabit switches or something like that.
A couple, if the switches will basically route the traffic without needing help from the router, right? Because a switch is just smart enough to be able to point stuff in the right direction. And this
the router is still responsible for the IP address and all that kind of stuff and kind of getting all the data where it needs to go. But
the TrendNet one I'm looking for here, that's 24 ports for $118. 31 4.5-star reviews. It's pretty easy to find stuff up on Amazon.com. D-Link has a 24-port rack-mountable switch with 94 reviews and averaging 4.5 stars. It's a little more expensive.
How much are they?
The TrendNet is $118. The D-Link is $163.
Yeah.
And then they've got a 16-port one from D-Link that drops down to $136.
He didn't have like a budget or anything in here, did he? He just wanted it to be as cheap as he could.
I remember college, and I remember that being my budget for everything, including food.
I think if you get 50 guys to donate $10,
right,
you've got $500. You can buy 4 of those switches, and everybody chips in and buys network cables and that kind of stuff. I think that's got to be your best option. I'm just trying to think of if Russell was nearby in the Twitch studio, they could give us. You don't want to just hook up 4 24-port gigabit switches together and hook them up to a commercial, consumer router. I don't know if there's something like that. Because, I go to QuakeCon all the time, right? And they're networking 3,000 computers all together. So it's a totally different ballgame. But, I was just reminiscing about that because it's fun to see the setup and teardown of events like that.
We will inquire with Russell before next week, but it's kind of like part of me is like, okay, you could add in you could pick up like a second RT-N66U and put it in access point mode, and have like one at one end of the room and one at the far end of the room. But I'm suspecting, with 50 people and a couple gigabit switches will take care of a lot of your problem. I will try to get a hold of Russell before next week, and we will see what the network guru says. But I'm always amazed at what putting people on Ethernet does to make life simpler. So, yeah.
I mean,
Burke's pointing at me from behind the studio. Yes, Ethernet. Chad, however, is just grinning fearily.
We bought a 1,000-foot spool of Cat6 cable when I was going into this office, and I was like, I'm going to put a Cat6 outlet, 2 Cat6 outlets at like every 5-foot interval along every wall, and we've done that. Like in here, my laptop that I'm on right now is we're sitting in the middle of a studio, but I'm going to run a network cable to it because it's just things just work better. We love wireless technology. Trust me, I love the idea of 802.11.AC and, longer ranges and higher speeds. But at the end of the day, give me a cable and I'll be better off.
Yeah, it was one of the funniest conversations I got into. A certain producer at a certain show I might have made in a live cable environment at a more, senior executive level got very upset about us having cables on our table and made us, basically go to wireless devices that, of course, immediately yarked in the middle of a live production, which led to a commercial break, me perhaps flinging a wireless keyboard into a wall and plugging in a USB keyboard, at which point we had no issue in the future with us using the dreaded wired technology. But it's wires, I think, will solve a lot of your problems.
Padre in the chat, I just wanted to point out real quick before we go, he says that, if this thing will stop scrolling on me. It's not stopping. It's not stopping. I don't know. Now I can't read it. It scrolled off the page and it's gone now. I apologize. The problem is that your core switch needs to be able to handle all of it. You can have some not so great stuff at the edges, he was saying, as long as it all comes back to one higher quality piece of equipment. And I don't know,
like a smart switch, essentially.
Yeah, but I don't know, like if you're using a router, is like, Padre could answer this in the chat room, is like the Asus Dark Knight N66U consumer level switch router a good enough endpoint for 400, for 24 port gigabit switches and that kind of stuff. Okay, so there you go. Combine a few low cost switches and that D2 will run thousands of concurrent nodes. And he says, don't go with the Dark Knight or those Asus ones or something like that. So, okay, that's good. That's good. There's a good answer. I didn't know Padre was in the chat there. So
I have a lot of faith in the Switch.
Yeah, minimum $300 to get a used Cisco, the Asus D2 because it's quiet. So, ask everybody at these gaming sessions, hey, can you pony up 10 or 15 bucks? It will help everybody.
Right.
And then take their money and go buy some cool stuff.
And when we don't spend on Switches, we'll buy with beer, or we'll buy beer with. In any case. Yes, they will. Nothing worse than an angry group of network gamers that are drunk and having lag issues.
Yes. They're willing to pony up at that point.
I think that's going to be about it for this episode of This Week in Computer Hardware. We got some more questions we're going to bring to you next week. We got some more hardware news coming with you next week. And right now, I'm going to look Ryan Shrout dead in the face, which, of course, is not actually looking at my camera, and say, Mr. Shrout, what's coming up on PC Per?
So we talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show. We will have frame rating discussions next week for you. And actually, probably maybe Monday, we'll have our 4K performance tests done. Cool. And so you can get a little bit of a tease on what how much you're going to have to upgrade in order to play games at 4K. That will be interesting there. And I don't know if I have anything else super specific planned up. I know that internally we are ramping for the Haswell launch coming up in early June with the onslaught of like Z87 motherboards. So internally we're all like trying to figure out how we're going to prepare like 19 stories for the Haswell launch and how that's not going to possibly work. So I'm distracting myself by things like 4K gaming and GTX 680 4GB testing as well. So expect at least those two stories out this week.
We had some fun on Techzilla this week. We talked about Windows 8.1, which is probably going to skip Metro, possibly basically allow you to go straight to the desktop. Veronica reviews Velodyne's V-Pulse earbuds. I talk about making a 3,000-foot Wi-Fi wireless bridge, which is a lot easier than you might think. And we got some SSD upgrade help up on the website. And next week, it's really exciting. Oh, I mentioned we relaunched HT Nation as a long show again. Robert Heron and I talking about home theater and HD, and we did a whole bunch of stuff about 4K content you can find now, should you be lucky enough to have a 4K HD TV. And I'm sorry, I'm touching the cable for the microphone, and Burke is making the most pained face I've ever seen.
Don't do that, I guess.
I'm sorry, Burke. It's just, it was here. It was like a fidget stone, a fidget cable. And we got Ben Heck on talking about Raspberry Pi versus the BeagleBone board, which they just released a faster BeagleBone board for like half the price. And we also talk about the new HTC One and the Samsung Galaxy S4. Because Robert Harron was like, oh, the S4 released. Do I want to upgrade my S3? And the answer is go watch the show. So, and it's exciting stuff.
Cool.
So, and Robert's going to be doing all the benchmarking, all of his classic HDTV benchmarking on that Seiki, that $1,500 Seiki 4K televisions. And I'm excited when I get back to the office this evening. I'm going to, hopefully, if Roger hasn't logged out of his Steam account, I'm going to have to get it to play some of the more serious video games on that machine. 4K.
I mean, I'm really eager. I'm really eager to see his review of it as a TV. That is not my forte. I want to see, is this the TV that everybody's going to go buy now for $1,500, or is it if you need to get some 4K stuff going, you can start with this and go from there. I'll be curious to get his kind of output from it. So it'll be good.
One of the interesting things about it is that part of Seiki's things, we're not going to build Netflix into it. We're not going to build an operating system into it. We're not going to build a whole bunch of sophisticated video playback tools into it. We're giving you a screen, 3 HDMI ports, a couple other inputs, and some inexpensive speakers. So that's part of their deal, is stripping it down. And I, for one, really, really like that. As cool as some of what Samsung's doing and some of what Vizio's done with onboard computers built into HD TVs, I'm probably always going to be dropping some kind of plugging some kind of box into it. I'm never giving up my Blu-rays, but it'll be interesting because he's excited to get a look at it because the price is so ridiculously low, and we actually have the high-end televisions, the 40 high-end, the now middle range, like $4,500 4K HD TVs from Sony coming in. So a lot of reviews coming up on HD Nation, and you can find that on youtube.com/techfeed. So it's exciting stuff. I'm really excited to play video games at 4K.
I am too. I think it's going to be the last month for me was super busy. Mm-hmm. This month, at PC Perspective is just chock full of stuff. I thought the spring and summer was going to be a little bit slower. It is definitely not the case.
I have a Bluetooth shower head on the show on Monday too.
I've seen that one.
It's from Kohler.
I almost bought it. Yeah, I know.
I own a lot of Kohler faucets. I'm curious to see what they can do with audio.
Please limit what you do in terms of video footage for that review. Is all
there will be no footage of me in a shower, clothed or unclothed. Zero. That. I would like to warn everyone that they will see no footage of me in a shower ever.
All right, good.
On Techzilla.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this edition of Twitch This Week in Computer Hardware. Email us, please, twitch@twit.tv. And if you haven't seen the show before, if this is new, if you want to find out where to find more, do us a favor, go to twit.tv/twitch. It's twit.tv/TWICH. We got links to basically get all of the shows, subscribe to the shows, and we thank you for listening. It's been fun. We want to thank Ting for sponsoring us. And we got to go. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Schrout.
We'll see you next week on Twitch.